young people, so young Iranians inside and outside of Iran have suffered so much.
What happens when a life of luxury suddenly turns into one of exile? Farah Pahlavi, Iran's former First Lady, has been living a reality far removed from her past. The story of her new life raises many questions. How does one navigate the challenges of displacement? What memories linger from a time of privilege? Dive into the intriguing journey of a woman who once held power and now seeks to redefine herself in a world that has dramatically changed. The end of a beginning, the exile. In 1978, an Iran revolution led to the exile of Farah and her family. This revolutionary was against the rule of her husband, who ruled as an authoritarian, particularly after the 1970s. The Shah's government suppressed political opposition and dissent. His regime relied heavily on the Savak, the secret police, which was notorious for its use of torture, surveillance, and repression of any opposition, including leftist groups, nationalists, and religious leaders. Critics of the regime, including intellectuals, activists, and political dissidents, were often imprisoned or forced into exile. The Shah ruled as an absolute monarch, concentrating power in his hands and often sidelining democratic institutions. While there were elections, they were widely regarded as controlled and manipulated to ensure the regime's dominance. Political freedoms were limited, and the press and public discourse were tightly controlled. The political opposition was marginalized or eliminated, including groups that later became key players in the 1979 revolution. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's relationship with the United States and Western powers also contributed to his image as a tyrant in the eyes of many Iranians. He was seen by critics as a puppet of Western interests, particularly after the 1953 CIA-backed coup that overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh and restored the Shah to power. This event fostered widespread resentment, as many saw the Shah as serving foreign interests, particularly those of the US, rather than the needs of the Iranian people. Iran experienced major economic growth, particularly in the 1960s due to oil revenues. However, this wealth was not evenly distributed, and many Iranians, especially in rural areas, still lived in poverty. Despite the booming economy, the Shah's government was seen as corrupt and out of touch with the population's needs. The growing discontent with the Shah's regime, fueled by political repression, economic inequality, and cultural alienation, led to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. His inability to manage rising opposition and protests ultimately led to his abdication and exile. After the revolution, many of his actions and policies were characterized as tyrannical by the new Islamic Republic of Iran, which sought to present itself as the antithesis of his authoritarian rule. Farah and the Shah, with their children, left the country on January 1979 under the threat of a death sentence. For that reason, most countries were reluctant to harbor them, with Anwar Sadat's Egypt being an exception. Keep watching to find out what happened to the royal family in exile. But before then, let's learn more about the life of the Shah and Princess Farah in Iran. Who is Farah Pahlavi? Farah Pahlavi, the Lady Empress of Iran, was born on 14 October 1938. In Tehran, she was part of an upper-class family, the only child of Captain Sohrabdiba and his wife, Farideh Gobti. Her father, Sohrabdiba, was an officer in the Imperial Iranian Army, and her mother, Farideh Gobti, was a homemaker. Farah was an athlete in her youth, becoming captain of her school's basketball team. After finishing her studies at the Lycée Razi, she pursued an interest in architecture at the École Spéciale d'Architecture in Paris, where she studied under Albert Besson. She was noted for her intellectual curiosity and grace. How did she join the royal household? The Shah, already the head of state, made official visits to foreign countries. He frequently met with a selection of local Iranian students. During such a meeting in 1959 at the Iranian embassy in Paris, Farideh was first presented to Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. After returning to Tehran in the summer of 1959, Mohammad Reza and Farideh began their courtship. The couple announced their engagement on the 23rd of November 1959. Before we reveal more details, let's get to know Mohammad Reza. Mohammad Reza. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, was born in Tehran on October 27, 1919, to Reza Khan, a military officer who founded the Pahlavi dynasty in 1925 after overthrowing the Qajar dynasty. His mother was Taj ul-Muluk, Reza Shah's second wife, who was deeply involved in raising Mohammad Reza and his siblings. Mohammad Reza was born into a time of political upheaval. His father, Reza Khan, was a strong-willed leader who sought to modernize and centralize Iran, laying the foundation for a secular and progressive state. As the crown prince, Mohammad Reza was raised in an atmosphere of discipline and formality, with his father instilling a sense of duty toward Iran. He was then sent to Switzerland to study at the prestigious Institut Le Rosey boarding school. This experience exposed him to Western ideals, languages, and culture, shaping his worldview and leadership style. One of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's most significant policies during his reign was his ambitious modernization plan, known as the White Revolution. This plan aimed to transform Iran into a modern, industrialized nation by introducing land ownership, education, women's rights, and healthcare reforms. His reforms included granting women the right to vote, nationalizing land, and redistributing it to peasants. These policies were controversial, particularly among religious leaders and traditional elites, as they undermined the established power structures. Keep watching as we delve deeper into their union and Farah's life as the Queen and Empress. Farah as Queen and Empress. In 1959, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and Farah met during Reza's royal trip to Europe. The Shah, who had been twice divorced from Princess Fawzia of Egypt and Soraya Esfandiari, sought a union that could provide him with a male heir, as his previous wives could not do that for him. It was a necessary tradition that he had a male heir to take over after his regime. The couple married on December 21 of the same year in a lavish ceremony held at Golistan Palace in Tehran. Farah was 21 and the Shah was 40. Their marriage produced 4 children. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, born October 31, 1960. He was the Shah's long-awaited male heir. Then Princess Farah Naz Pahlavi, born March 12, 1963. Prince Ali Reza Pahlavi was born in 1966, and Princess Layla Pahlavi was born in 1970. Farah's life as the Shah's wife was deeply intertwined with her responsibilities as Iran's queen. She was more than just a ceremonial figure. She was a partner in his vision for a modern and progressive Iran. Farah fully embraced the Shah's modernization programs, including the White Revolution, which focused on reforms in land ownership, women's rights, and education. She worked alongside him to promote these changes, even in the face of resistance from conservative elements in Iranian society. She encouraged the Shah in his efforts to modernize Iran and strengthen its ties with the West, sharing his belief in creating a progressive, secular state. Farah offered emotional support to the Shah, who faced immense pressure as a ruler. He often confided in her during times of crisis, including political challenges and personal difficulties, such as his struggles with illness. Their marriage is often described as a partnership. Farah balanced her duties as a wife and public figure while providing him with stability. As a mother, Farah was deeply devoted to her children, despite the demands of her royal duties. She worked hard to maintain a sense of normalcy in the palace while ensuring they received the best education. As a mother, she instilled the values of service and responsibility in her children, preparing them for their future roles in representing Iran. Her unwavering support for the Shah and her contributions to Iran's progress remain central to her legacy as one of the most iconic royal figures in the country's history. Her status was elevated in 1967 when she became the first woman in Iranian history to be crowned empress during the Shah's elaborate coronation ceremony. Farah initially limited herself to a ceremonial role. She spent much of her time attending the openings of various education and healthcare institutions without venturing too deeply into controversial issues. As an empress, Farah played an active role in cultural, social, and charitable activities. She modernized the monarchy's image and promoted women's rights. She was deeply involved in education, healthcare, and the arts, and oversaw cultural institutions such as the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art. However, as time progressed, this position changed. The Queen became much more actively involved in government affairs, which concerned issues and causes that interested her. She used her proximity and influence with her husband, Mohammad Reza, to secure funding and focus attention on causes, particularly in women's rights and cultural development. Farah's concerns were education, health, culture, and social matters, with politics being excluded from her purview, as she didn't want anything to do with the political aspect of her empress duties. One of Farah's main initiatives was the founding of Pahlavi University, which was meant to improve the education of Iranian women. It was the first American-style university in Iran. Before then, Iranian universities had always been modeled on the French style. As a philanthropist, she progressed Iranian civil society through many charities and founded Iran's first American-style university, enabling more women to become students. She also facilitated the buying back of Iranian antiquities from museums abroad. The Francophile Farah befriended the French culture minister André Malraux, leading her to arrange the exchange of cultural artifacts between French and Iranian art galleries and museums, a lively trade that continued until the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Farah heads many charities like the Organization for Family Well-Being Nurseries for the children of working mothers, teaching women and girls to read, professional training, and family planning, the Organization for Blood Transfusion, the Organization for the Fight Against Cancer, and the Organization for Help to the Needy. The list is almost endless. Farah worked long hours at her charitable activities, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every weekday. Eventually, the Queen presided over 40 staff who handled various requests for assistance on a range of issues. She became one of the most highly visible figures in the imperial government and the patron of 24 educational, health, and cultural organizations. Her humanitarian role earned her immense popularity, particularly in the early 1970s. During this period, she traveled a great deal within Iran, visiting some of the more remote parts of the country and meeting with the local citizens. One of Farah's main achievements, and her most recognized endeavor in supporting the performing arts, was her patronage of the Shiraz Arts Festival. This occasionally controversial event was held annually from 1967 until 1977 and featured live performances by Iranian and Western artists. The majority of her time, however, went into the creation of museums and the building of their collections. As a former architecture student, Farah's appreciation of it is demonstrated in the Royal Palace of Niavaran, designed by Mohsen Faroui and completed in 1968. It mixes traditional Iranian architecture with contemporary design from the modern 60s. Nearby is the personal library of the Empress, consisting of 22,000 books, principally works on Western and Eastern art, philosophy, and religion. The interior was designed by Aziz Farmanfarmayan Ancient Art. Aside from building a collection of historic Iranian artifacts, Farah also expressed interest in acquiring contemporary Western and Iranian art. To this end, she put her significant patronage behind the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art. Using funds from the government, the Empress took advantage of a somewhat depressed art market of the 1970s to purchase several important works of Western art. Under her guidance, the museum acquired nearly 150 works by such artists as Pablo Picasso, Claude Monet, George Grosz, and the likes of them. The Tehran Museum of Contemporary Arts collection is considered one of the most significant outside Europe and the United States. Despite all these good works, Farah's life as an empress had to end. She had to go into exile with her family. What happened to her during this turbulent time? Let's find out. Life after the exile. After the fall of the Pahlavi dynasty in 1979, Farah Pahlavi and her family faced a life of exile marked by loss, struggle, and a mission to preserve the memory of Iran's monarchy. When the Iranian Revolution ousted Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the royal family fled the country in January 1979. They sought asylum in multiple nations, including Egypt, Morocco, the Bahamas, Mexico, the United States, and Panama, but struggled to find a permanent home due to political sensitivities. The Shah was gravely ill with cancer, and their final refuge was in Cairo, Egypt, under the hospitality of President Anwar Sadat. After leaving Egypt, Mohammad Reza's health declined further. In October 1979, the couple was allowed into the United States for medical treatment, inflaming already tense relations between the U.S. government and the revolutionaries in Tehran. The tensions ultimately led to the attack and takeover of the American embassy in Tehran in what became known as the Iran hostage crisis. The Shah and Empress were not permitted to remain in the United States, and shortly after Shah's surgical treatment on the 22nd of October, 1979, the couple departed for Contadora Island in Panama. However, speculation arose that the Panamanian government was seeking to arrest Mohammad Reza in preparation for extradition to Iran. The Empress again appealed to President Anwar Sadat to return to Egypt. The Empress said this plea was made through a conversation between herself and Jahan Sadat. Their request was granted, and they returned to Egypt in March 1980, where they remained until Shah's death 4 months later on July 27, 1980, in Cairo. His death marked a devastating turning point for Farah, who became a widow at 42 years old. The Shah was buried in the Al-Rifa'i Mosque in Cairo, a site reserved for monarchs, with a state funeral attended by world leaders. The Shah's death thrust Farah into a life of solitary leadership and responsibility. She was left to raise their 4 children in a foreign land, balancing the pressures of exile while maintaining the family's legacy. However, life in exile proved to be deeply challenging. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi assumed the family's leadership and became the symbolic head of the Iranian monarchy in exile. Farah described exile as living with your body in one place and your soul in another. She longed for her homeland and expressed profound grief over being severed from Iran's rich culture and history. Little did she know that another tragedy was at her doorstep. What happened? Let's find out. Another tragedy. Reportedly struggling with depression and grief over the loss of Iran, Princess Layla Pahlavi, who is the second daughter of the Shah, died of a substance overdose in 2001. This made Farah so unavailable that news of her did not surface on the internet again until 2004, after she published her memoir, An Enduring Love, My Life with the Shah, which provides insight into her life as queen, the challenges of exile, and Shah's final years. The book was well received among monarchists and remains a key source of the Pahlavi era. Farah often speaks about the emotional toll of exile and the loss of her homeland, a theme that resonates with many Iranians who fled the country after the revolution. Despite the personal tragedies in her life, Farah remains a symbol of resilience and dignity for many monarchists and members of the Iranian diaspora. Unfortunately, tragedy struck again as she lost her second son. Deeply affected by his displacement and mourning the loss of Iran, he took his own life in Boston at the age of 44. His death was another devastating blow to the family. Farah spent most of her life in exile in countries like the United States and France. She became an advocate for the preservation of Iranian culture and history. She supported art and education, often speaking about the Shah's vision for a modern Iran. She regularly interacted with Iranian expatriate communities and monarchist groups, keeping the memory of the Pahlavi dynasty. Despite her tragedies, Farah remained a prominent public figure in cultural preservation. She played an instrumental role in promoting Iranian artists and ensuring that Iran's rich artistic heritage remained visible on the global stage. Farah frequently speaks at events, particularly in exile communities, reflecting on Iran's past and expressing hopes for its future. She continues to support charities and foundations, spending time with her surviving children, particularly Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who lives in the United States and is seen as the symbolic leader of the Iranian monarchist movement. She also reflects on the legacy of her time as Shahbanu and the enduring bond she shares with her homeland. Farah Pahlavi remains a significant figure for many Iranians, particularly monarchists and members of the diaspora. For monarchists, she is a living reminder of pre-revolutionary Iran, a period they associate with progress, modernization, and cultural pride. For her critics, Farah represents the excesses and shortcomings of the Pahlavi dynasty. Despite these differing perspectives, she is widely respected for her grace, resilience, and advocacy for Iranian culture. She has managed to preserve her dignity while navigating exile with profound loss. She continues to be a unifying figure for monarchists who hope for the restoration of the monarchy in Iran, though she refrains from direct political involvement. Her focus remains on preserving the memory of Iran's cultural heritage and the achievements of the Pahlavi era. Much like the Pahlavi dynasty, Farah's story is one of grandeur, upheaval, and survival, a poignant reflection of Iran's tumultuous modern history. Farah Pahlavi's life after the Iranian Revolution is a profound story of resilience, heartbreak, and determination. A bit of fame for Farah. In 2009, the Persian-Swedish director Nahid Persun Sarvastani released a feature-length documentary about Farah Pahlavi's life entitled The Queen and I. The film was screened at various international film festivals such as IDFA and Sundance. In 2012, the Dutch director, Kees Roorda, made a theater play inspired by the life of Farah Pahlavi in Exile. In the play, Liz Snoijink acted as Farah Diba. Farah continues to express her love for Iran and her hopes for its future. In her public statements, she emphasizes the vision of a free and democratic Iran, where its rich history and cultural heritage are honored, and the importance of unity among Iranians, regardless of political or religious beliefs. Despite the pain of exile, Farah, now in her mid-80s, remains optimistic about the potential for reconciliation and a brighter future for her homeland. She is an enduring symbol of Iran's royal past. She has outlived the Shah and 2 of her children, carrying the weight of history with grace and composure. While she refrains from active political involvement, her presence inspires hope and nostalgia among many Iranians, longing for a return to their country's former glory. Her life after exile is a testament to resilience, perseverance, and an unwavering love for her homeland. Do you believe Farah will ever return to Iran? Let us know your opinion in the comment section below. If you enjoy this video, don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.